Bore on a Budget Part 2. This is the Bear Creek Arsenal 458 SOCOM 16-inch barrel Gen 2 side charging upper. I was sent this by Bear Creek Arsenal for an honest review, and we're doing exactly that. Now this is Part 2. I have got a Part 1 video you can find in the link below if you managed to miss that. Speaking of that video, I've already had a few of you guys send me Instagram messages, and a couple of guys sent me emails saying, "Where's it at? Where's it at?" So I've got that. I've got the update for it. Now, I did have a small setback. I'll detail that here in just a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and give you my findings so far. I did take this to the local shooting range, and I did everything that YouTube tells me to do to be advertiser friendly. Considering that this isn't even a firearm, the federal government doesn't see it as a firearm, but it's black and it's scary, and they're probably going to say that I don't fit advertising guidelines, even though I've done everything I'm supposed to. I use the little neutered mags that are 6 rounds, and anyway, now I forgot my shooting bags, my front bag, and my rear bag, and I actually, for some reason, didn't even have my EDC bag with me. Normally, I'll just throw my EDC bag on the shooting bench, and I'll lay the rifle on that and start shooting. All I had was the bog, so I pancaked it out flat on the shooting table just so I'd have some kind of rest. So the groups weren't going to be exactly the best, and that really wasn't going to matter because of the failure that I had. But now, this thing started drilling just fine. I got it sighted in, great. Started shooting the first group, it was great. And then what's funny is being at a public range, somehow I'm shooting a 46 cal and a freaking 30 cal winds up on my target, but that's water under the bridge. But now I started shooting this thing and it started throwing the bullets in really well. You know, like I said, I'd forgotten my bag, so I said we'll do grouping later. I'm just here for function testing. So now I got through 20 rounds of this Defender 458 SOCOM. This is the 350 grain flat nose, and it says it's doing a 1650 feet per second out of a 16-inch barrel. It shot really well. Basically, the only malfunction that I had was the first round. I went ahead and stuffed this thing to 7, and I had just forgotten, simply enough, this magazine was from when I used to shoot a lot of 458 SOCOM. I stuffed this thing to 7, and it's just simply too much tension for that bolt to strip that 7th round off. Once I remembered, I was like, oh, you big dummy. Once I remembered, I started loading this to 6 rounds. The gun cycled perfectly. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. I pulled the trigger, it went bang. It picked up it ejected a round, it picked up another round, it fed it, it went bang. So yeah, we were really good on that part. But now while I was shooting my groups, I noticed that, like I said, the first couple groups were okay. The next group went 4 inches up and 4 inches right.
I seen the dirt fly anyway.
Oh, we're just insanely off.
I think shot right above it.
No, I'm gonna have to go over there and count the clicks.
This Vortex Strike Eagle 1 through 6 by 24, it was inevitable. This has been on a big bore since 2016, period. It was on my first 458 SOCOM. It found itself on my 4570, and it finally gave up the ghost. So basically, I didn't have another optic in my YouTube budget. I don't have one to borrow off of another gun right now because it's hunting season. So this is my setback. I'm having 0 problems out of the upper. I broke my scope. So basically, when I started figuring out that the scope wouldn't respond, it wouldn't tweak back, it wouldn't do anything, I decided that we're going to call it. Because, I mean, you're talking $2 a round, right? Big bore ammo is not cheap. That's where we're coming in, big bore on a budget. The upper is relatively cheap compared to all of your other offerings. It can basically be as much as half price as a lot of your other offerings. But now your ammo is going to be a bit pricey, but the reason that I like 458 SOCOM is because you're getting somewhat near the power level of 4570 out of a semi. And boom, there it is. This is the 16-inch heavy barrel 458 SOCOM. The reason I like the heavy barrel, it is a little bit heavier to carry, but when you put a suppressor on the end of it, it's not so likely to droop. I'm hoping for a minimal point of impact shift, which I was really wanting to test that because, you know, that's one of the things that suppressor guys need to test, but we lost our optic. Of course, that was the Strike Eagle 1 through 6 by 24. I'm not putting it down. It put up with 5 years of heavy big bore abuse. Of course, it's in a Burris, the pepper mount. So when I got home, I checked everything. All my torque was still good. I didn't lose torque. I just knocked the guts out of the optic. That's easy enough. We're going to try out Vortex's warranty, and we'll see how that goes. But now, as for muzzle duty, for some reason it's 5/8 32 rather than the more popular 5/8 24. So what I wound up doing was getting this from Rex Silentium. I ordered it from them. It was the more, I guess, budget friendly, because that's what this build is a budget build. I think it was somewhere around $76 shipped, and it looks really nice. This fits your Hybrid 46. It fit the JK Armament 155. These are industry standard threads. So this is going to fit a bunch of them. They call it industry standard for a reason. So I'm not disappointed in that at all. I was a little wondered why they used an adapter instead of just making it 5/8 32, but it'll work. It'll work for now. Of course, the ammunition that I used was the Defender here. This 350 grain flat nose, traveling at 1650 out of a 16-inch barrel. Now, this stuff ran well. I had a 100%, it went bang 100%, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And now, as for the chamber, I know that a buddy of mine, he was like, I'm really interested in seeing how your brass comes out. The brass came out just fine. Of course, it's a bit more sooty because I used it suppressed. So suppressed backs up those gases. So I'm not seeing anything really bad, ugly. I know the primer is dark, but it didn't punch the primer. That is not actually a hole in the primer. So we're good to go. And all of them turned out very similarly. So you just see that as it fire formed, it didn't do anything bad. So we've got a good chamber in this one. So that is a definite plus. So now let's go ahead and take this bolt out, because I was curious in the first video. I kind of was curious about the stake job, and I said that I was going to make it a little more obvious, but I decided against that, because basically I'm going to run this thing the way that it comes from Bear Creek. So there's no use in trying to stake it up. If that gas key comes off, it comes off, because apparently the way that they stake is they pinch the sides right here. And what I normally see is just a divot. I mean, I'm talking just a punch divot right in the top. But that apparently this is their way of staking it, squishing it together to hold the bolts. Of course, it's not moving. Everything's looking good. So I really wanted to do more than 20 rounds. Of course, like I said, the optic came apart. So let's go ahead and give you guys an update video to keep you out of suspense. That way you don't have to wonder, what happened? So the first 20 rounds went fine. I am tickled with this. I think I see this thing staying around in my collection for a considerable amount of time. I like this little plug here. The little plug is pretty neat. I showed it in the previous video. They put a flat on it. So that flat actually sits right on the top of your upper, where your receiver extension goes in, and that keeps it from backing out. Oh, and really quickly, the reason that I prefer Lancers in a 458 SOCOM is because it doesn't have a ridge in the front. Now, you can get your Magpul mags, they have a ridge down the front, and your longer rounds, you know, if I had a loaded projectile, your longer rounds hit that ridge in the front. The Lancers don't have that, so you don't get that resistance. So if you wound up with an upper, this right here is your save a bunch of headache, save a bunch of time solution. So, all right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Bear Creek Arsenal 458 SOCOM. I'm tickled to death that they sent it out. It's like the universe always takes care of you. I had to sell my first one to feed my family while I was in a little bit of a rough spot. This one right here came in, replaced it, and so far, I think I'm really going to like it. I do not foresee any problems. I'm going to get a new optic on here. I don't know if I'm going to send this one back to Vortex, or I don't know yet. We'll get an optic figured out. We'll get this thing sighted back in. We'll continue testing. The next video will be a full-on, this is how it groups, this is how it runs, this is what I've shot through it, blah, blah, blah. And it'll be the full review of this, and that'll wrap this series up. You know, of course, it'll show back up in possibly a hunting video or something like that. It'll wind up back on the channel, and I'm tickled to death to say that, because I do love 458 SOCOM, and I have for a while. But now remember, Down below, there is a Linktree link. You hit that Linktree link, and all of those places are vetted. You basically, when you do your shopping, let's say that you're buying a new scope or camouflage clothing or whatever, you hit those links, I get a small kickback from it, and it literally costs you nothing. So you spend a little bit of money, I wind up with a little bit more money for ammo. I mean, this stuff ain't cheap. Wind up with a little bit more money for ammo. It's a win-win. I become more entertaining. The tests get more thorough. Boom, we're good to go. But now y'all have a wonderful day. We'll see you next video. I love you.